Beverly, Catherine, Janice. Thank you, Janice. Gosh. Shelly, Elisa, Prabha. Oh, look at your good hair. Yeah.
Hey, Andrée. Hey, Alicia.
Hey, Jenny.
This is fun. Gee. It's also happy hour, so you should all be drinking vodka.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. We wanted to start right on time. I'm Mary White, one of the co-chairs of WEAD with Manoush Zomaradinia. And we'd like to welcome you to our first bi-monthly art and education presentation with our beloved Andrée Singer Thompson. We'd start with the land acknowledgement. We are in Wichan country on Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone land. And we'd like for fun to have each of you, if you feel like it, put in the chat where you're from and the land acknowledgement for your area. I'd like to mention, while we're waiting for a few people to join, the two exhibitions that WEAD is organizing this fall, one at Gallery Route 1 and the other one at the Peninsula Art Museum in San Bruno, California. So we hope very much that you will come join us, and we will have put in the chat the links to more information about those two shows. I'd now like to introduce you to Manoush Zomaradinia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so good to see everyone. I just wanted to mention that this program is a new series that we just started, and we are so excited to have this opportunity for further education for the community, making the art and education for the for people and in our website. So maybe we can pass it on to the next person. Kirsten.
Thank you, Manoush. Welcome and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I'm Kirsten, I'm a board member at WEAD. I just wanted to tell you real quick about our fundraising campaign that's kicking off tonight. It's really nice to see all of your faces. And I have to point out that some of you I've actually never met in person, only on Zoom. And even though the screen time can sort of be tiresome, it's because of technology that we've been able to share time and even be here together today safely. And these are crisis times we live in, but we build community any way we can. So as an organization, WEAD recognizes that we need to build resilience for the years ahead, and technology can be key to building the kind of community that bridges borders, floods, or pandemic outbreaks that keep us from being together in person. So that's why we're starting to raise funds to rebuild our website and directory, and to sort of build an online hub and gallery of powerful ecofeminist artists, so we can amplify and uplift each other's voices and visions. So if you're able, I think on Eventbrite, you've already been asked to make a donation. If you can support our campaign, you can also visit our website at weadartists.org. That's WEAD spelled W-E-A-D, and artists plural. And just click on the donate button in the top right. I'll also drop the donate link into the chat. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. And I'll pass the mic to Sharon.
Thank you, Kirsten. I am so happy to have the honor to introduce my dear friend, colleague, and teaching co-conspirator, Andrée Singer Thompson. Andrée is a longtime San Francisco Bay Area artist and teacher who has exhibited her work both nationally and internationally. Her ceramic works combine raku-fired metal and clay and wood-fired works. Much of her sculpture, site-specific installations, and performance pieces are interactive and educational, addressing issues of individual and communal survival. She often collaborates with other artists on public art projects that involve community and participation. Her large installation of wood and clay sculptures at the Judah Magnus Museum called Survivors was a tribute to her family and other survivors of the Holocaust, a reoccurring theme throughout her career. Past artworks also include installations addressing violence and a tribute to the sardine industry, both in collaboration with Valerie Otani and Elizabeth Stanek, with whom she worked on installations for 25 years. In 2002, an exhibition at Scripps College in Claremont, California, she revived Skins, a project which is a series of wet play performances that she begun in 1970s, addressing transformation. Her collaborations with Susan Leibowitz Steinman include projects about disappearing birds, recycling issues, and a bench renovation at Peralta's Children's Park, working with elementary school children in Oakland. Susan commissioned Andrée to paint banners of California native plants and animals as part of a permanent public art installation called California Native in Palo Alto, California. Her 50-foot golden trout, Guillermo, made of recycled metal, adorns the Richmond Civic Arts Center auditorium wall above the Richmond Arts Center, part of a large installation about drinkable water and endangered species. This state fish, endangered in 1986, remains on view as a symbol of survival. Local children and invited artists contributed artworks as part of the project. Finally, Andrée is a beloved teacher and mentor to many. You'll hear more about that important aspect of her art practice in her presentation tonight, working as a California Arts Council Artist in Residence teaching artist with the Richmond Arts Center at several Richmond public schools for 20 years, where she created a project called Monsters, Demons, and Imaginary Beings, and for 5 summers teaching and developing an eco-literacy, eco-art, and ceramic program at a self-esteem camp for girls in the Catskill Mountains in New York State. Andrée just retired from teaching college art courses in raku, ceramics, sculpture, and a class she passionately created in 2005 called Eco Art Matters, all at Laney College in Oakland, where she taught for 44 years. Andrée Singer Thompson lives in Berkeley in a yellow house with purple steps and has chickens, food plants, compost, and a gray water system in her backyard. She just retired from 25 years as a member of the board of directors of WEAD. On behalf of our WEAD board, we want to thank you, Andrée, for your generous and tireless service to our organization. We miss you. Andrée, take it away.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, all right. First, I want to thank everybody, the board, for putting this all together and all the work it took. And I never could have done it without Minouche and my wonderful new assistant, Francis Sutphin, but also with all of you. And it's been so much a part of my life to be a part of WEAD. And so I'm doing this in honor of WEAD, really. So, okay. I was asked to give this talk about my own work, about resilience, and how I came to use art as a healing force with students and especially children at risk. The hardest part of preparing this talk was whittling it down 65 years of art making and teaching into less than an hour. At a time when human life on Earth is in danger and needs protection, we all need to know more about the nature of survival. I believe we all have an innate need to reach for resilient health. So we need artists and creatives who are already practiced in thinking sideways and outside of the box to help create solutions for the most urgent social and environmental issues. So developing creative minds with children and students not only helps them become more confident, resilient selves, but they are the future creators of positive solutions that we need to survive. So I worked with elementary school children, and I guess I should show you some of the pictures from my past works and the teaching that I have done. I have worked with children for over 30 years, especially children at risk, and for 60 years as teaching in other situations, including elementary and high schools, college, mental institutions, ethical culture society, the US Army in France, the East Bay Center for Performing Arts, and lots of workshops nationally and internationally, but usually including children. We all know that several studies have shown that art helps children develop problem solving and critical thinking skills. Early in my career as a young mother, I often took the children to the zoo, where I became interested in endangered species, and I began making drawings and sculptures honoring them, mostly in porcelain. This was one of the starting points for my work in the environment, which is another form of resilient survival. After a trip to Hungary in search of family, I began work that continues to the present called Resilient Survival, based on meeting and greeting to know the family that did survive. Most of them did not. My statement from the Judah Magnus Museum was, the miracle of our lives is that we do and can survive serious trauma and are still able to feel life and love again. These pieces, like life, are heavily textured, as I believe skin's surface textures are part of clay's language. Once my niece Karen came into the studio as I was pressing clay into a table full of sand, stones, and things that would burn out to leave a textured surface. When she saw all the mess, she said, "Well, I guess we'll never call you anal retentive. I guess you're more like anal explosive." Part of the surface language also comes from different kinds of firings, as here, the ash resting on the piece. And sometimes it comes back from the kill with cracks. And some of you already know that this is kintsugi, where the cracks are filled with real gold, as the Japanese do, saying that we are more valuable because of our cracks. A few more of the figures from my Judah Magnus show in 1990. Traumatized victims often bury memories, causing a split between mind and body. Healing entails reliving the pain and shame of the trauma and reuniting the body and ego. So these figures unite clay torsos and wooden bodies embedded in symbolic railroad ties. In 2015, my friend Shinji Eshima invited some friends to join him at the dedication of the Topaz Museum, honoring the Japanese families of the internment camp in Delta, Utah, where his father was interred during the war. Afterwards, we went to the gorgeous Utah landscape, including the arches, and upon my return, I made this series of hoodoo survivor figures as a memorial in honor of those desert spirits. As part of my survival work, I became more informed about the growing environmental crisis, especially water. As my ecology knowledge grew, especially about water, and as a board member of WEAD, I did a large installation at the Richmond Art Center, where I worked as an artist and instructor and coordinator for 26 years. The piece is called Making Waves, Creating a Ripple Effect, and it featured Guillermo, a 50-foot sculpture. Guillermo was a Kern County golden trout, which at the time had been reclassified and saved from extinction, but unfortunately is now back on the endangered list as we speak. As a symbol then, however, of survival, messages from the community members are written on the back of this 50-foot sculpture made of recycled materials and welded by my friend William Wareham. The original installation included a globe, as you see on the left, dripping fresh water, and then the children were paintings of endangered species between the painted waves on the concrete. The environmental artworks also invited other artists to have an installation inside the studio with lots of information about diminishing water. In order to have some of those pictures, I worked with the, again with the students at the Art Center to make those. One year, there were several deaths in my family. It was a time to deal with our impermanence. I've always loved clay best in its wet, unfired state. So I began making work using wet slip, knowing that it would continue to change. So here is the statement that accompanied the wet works. We are always in a state of becoming. For each passage, we have to take time to mourn that which is passing, so that we are free to receive that which is being born. I made castings of my friends' faces and put them out on my front lawn for 10 years and recorded the changes that took place. And then I worked collaboratively with dancers and people covered with wet slip. And in this case, it was a group of dancers that pressed their hands and feet into the wall, leaving impressions. The series of pieces that I worked with where I covered people was called skins, because after they disrobed and left their clothing behind, it became the skins of the piece. The first one was with David, and then I did several with Marty, my friend, the violinist. Among the most important works that I did in collaborations with Valerie Otani and Elizabeth Stanek were for over 25 years, doing very large environmental and social installations, some of which included wet clay also. In this particular piece, we collected natural deposits, sometimes with impressions of animals, and then we fired them and included them in this show at Clay and Change in the Walnut Creek Civic Arts Gallery. The piece was always changing, so as you see on the top, there was even an extra image of the water on the sand. So every time people came to the exhibit, it continued to change. Fragile Ecologies was one of the most important shows that we did for the NCECA conference in Portland, Oregon. In this show, all of the pieces were made of unfired dried clay. As visitors approached, dripping water was activated, causing the deterioration of the works. Some of the wet works then would start to dry with, from a heater on it. So over the course of the show, the pieces melted or dried out and were in a constant state of change. At the opening, a woman came up and saw this piece and said, "Oh my, what beautiful rocks. Where did you get those?" And I explained it. Elizabeth and I made them, and it took a long time because we had to burnish them. At seeing the water come on, she said, "Oh my, something so labor intensive and so beautiful. How sad that it will disappear." And I simply said, "Bingo." In the wet pieces, this one in particular, we tried to emulate the patterns in nature and how they were the same as the patterns in the human heart. A book, my thing's stuck, honey. Didn't go off. Here. Okay, great, thank you. Thank goodness for Minusha. A wonderful book by Mario Porges is now available on all of these collective works, Eva, Elizabeth Stanek, and Valerie and myself. There is also a very wonderful 19-minute film about all of my wet works by Jennifer Steinman with help from my son, Nathan Thompson. That is available on Vimeo. Not moving forward, honey. I don't know why. Huh. Okay, so I do this one. All right, I also did several collaborations with other people. This one was especially, I mean, I often work with Susan Leibowitz Steinman, who, by the way, she and Joe Hansen were responsible for getting me onto the WEAD board all those many years ago. Yeah, a long time ago. So this was one of the pieces that we did together. called For the Birds. And this is California native, where Susan planted native plants in the runway, and I did the paintings on the banners of native figures. This was one of our first pieces, and almost all the pieces we ever did included an interaction with the audience. So here we invited them to do drawings on the sidewalks. This is a piece I did with Mary and Christina, whom we've already met now. And we've done a couple of pieces together, mostly at Pioneers. So this was our piece at Pioneers. It was a sacred watering place with all these beautiful glass bricks from Mary. This is work that I'm doing now. I rediscovered these sticks and bones that I used in the Judah Magnus show in 1990. And now that I have found them again, I have drawn pictures of endangered species on them. And I added to this collection my eggs, because I love making eggs as a symbol of power and hope and birth. And I painted, continued to do drawings of endangered species on them. And then I started doing ghost drawings by burning my hair on it. So that was my work. And in 1980, as an artist in residence in the public schools, Valerie Otani and I developed and taught monsters, demons, and imaginary beings, a federally funded Artist in Schools program for elementary school children at risk in Richmond. I continued to teach that program alone for several years, and these are some of my favorite masks from that program. Teaching both children and adults has been an important extension of my work as a way of connecting with and inspiring younger generations to believe in themselves, understand the power of art and beauty as a healing force. It's not accidental that I worked with children at risk. Given my own traumatic childhood, I felt a kinship with their traumas, many of which were far worse than mine. As I came to know some of the children in these at-risk communities, it was very rewarding and healing to me to watch them experiment and grow, to feel good about their works, and to enjoy a safe, non-judgmental place to express their feelings. Most of the students we taught in the Richmond program were of mixed ethnic backgrounds, including mostly African American, Hispanic, Asian, Hmong Mien, Vietnamese, and a few whites. The 10-week program introduced children to the idea that art is a language to express feelings and ideas for which there are not always words. On the first day of class, we would go over the class guidelines, which are posted in the room. And here are some of them. I'm not going to read them all, but I will read a few that I think are important. The art world is a safe place to take risks, create things you cannot do in real life. And art is a language that sends messages about your feelings and ideas without using words. It's visual art through your eyes and musical through your ears. Here you will learn to dialogue with a secret self, to talk and trust your own feelings. Only you know what you feel and what you like, and that is your personal aesthetic. Ugly is a 4-letter word that we do not use in here. It is your job as an artist to figure out what you don't like about your work, and it is your power to change it until you do. So we don't destroy anything we make that you have given birth to. We change them. But most important, of all the children that have ever lived and ever will live, there never has been and there never will be anybody exactly like you. On the first day of class, I do an exercise and I show them that I'm going to send them a message without using words. And I show them my face as though I woke up in the morning very tired. And I say, now what part of my face told you I was tired? Was it my eye? Was it my hair? My nose? My chin? No, it was my eyes, my eyebrows, and my mouth. So they all had to make a page of facial expressions that they could then include in their future drawings. And then I gave the first lesson. I told a story using drawing these lines. I drew a blue line to represent being on the water in a boat on a nice, calm, sunny day. And suddenly there was a thunder and lightning storm, and then my stomach felt all woozy. So they thereby got to see that the 3 lines expressed different feelings. Then I said, if I took a curved line and I kept drawing it, it would become, and connected it, it would become a shape. And some shapes have names. So I had them make a page of shapes that had names. Then I said, well, what if you took a line for a walk, kept on traveling and connected? You'd make a shape that didn't have a name, so give it a name. Then I gave them a big piece of paper, and as I handed it to them, I said, how are you feeling today? Horizontal, vertical, or diagonal? And then they would take it, and I'd say, okay, in the middle of this page, I want you to make a really big shape. I also had on the board always a page of words that they were learning. So as I made them this big shape in the middle of the page, I said, this is a torso. I showed them my torso, and I said, on my torso, I have appendages. They are my head, my arms, my legs, and of course, boys like to think they have another one, and of course, they all laughed. But then I said, this creature you have made, you have the torso, but now you have to add its appendages. And the appendages don't have to be normal because this is not normal. It could have arms, legs, it could have tails, it could have several heads, it could have horns, it could have wings if it wants to fly. What kind of skin does it have? Does it have scales or fur? And what name does it have? And finally, and most important, what magic powers is this creature going to have? Because this is going to be your ally, and an ally is your friend. It's going to be someone that to help you. It'll be your friend when you need somebody to talk to, and it will be able to do things for you. So these were just a couple when they started to make their, and eventually they would develop them into colored drawings. We continued to develop this personal friend and protective creatures in drawings, paintings, clay, mixed media, and finally masks that they could wear in plays and in videos. Another project was to do self-portraits. Some of these portraits were done with Kemet Amenafas for a public kiosk. Because we only took 10 students at a time in a group, we got to talk to each other openly. These portraits, writings, and all their works often reflected personal experiences and fears. Most were from poor neighborhoods, crime-infested. Many were from broken or single-parent families or with incarcerated or addicted parents. Some were immigrants from war-torn countries arriving on boats. One immigrant child told us her mother had to be thrown overboard. The local fears were about gangs, neighborhood shootings, fear of being shot or attacked. Some works actually showed signs of physical or sexual abuse, and then we had to decide if to report it for an investigation. I became aware of what it was like to live in their community because even at the school, we often heard gunshots during class. All of them knew someone who had been shot and killed. Once we had a lockdown as gunfights were happening across the school playground, and often there were warnings of the gun at school. If a Hispanic child turned up missing, it turns out that they had been sent back to Mexico. Once we returned to the room where we were working only to find that the artworks were covered with splattered red paint, often by a child who was angry and not able to be in the program. We spent the session discussing why would someone need to do this or want to do it. we acted out some of our anger, and we made art about and expressed our anger and responses. It was an important sharing. These are a few more of the faces. There were so many to choose from. It was hard to choose for this program. Another project involved 350 children from Grant Elementary School, was a public project created for the Richmond Art Station in collaboration with Kemet Amanafis, Ruth Morgan, and Rafael Jesus Gonzalez. Erica Clark Shaw did student tiles of endangered species for the kiosk benches. This public work was in commemoration of a student that had been shot and killed at the BART station. It was all adorned with the students' art and poems, masks, drawings, and even photographs of them. Unfortunately, the kiosk and benches were regularly damaged, and eventually it was removed for a BART expansion. The masks were salvaged, and they could now be seen at the heart of Richmond at the Harbor Way Community Garden. In addition to teaching the program at schools, we were sometimes able to take them on tours to Tilden Park, where a ranger gave educational tours. Some of the students had never been out of Richmond or even in the woods. They thought we might be seeing lions or tigers. Once I took a farmer to an elementary school with a cow, which he demonstrated milking to the second graders. They said, "Ooh, that's nasty. That's not where my milk comes from. It comes from a bottle in the store." So even then, there were signs of nature deficit disorder. These were some of my favorite pieces that we displayed at the end of the class, and we went to when we had the show. And everyone is usually very excited. This is a young man whose work I loved, and seeing them all together. At the exhibit, people wanted to, it was heartening to see the parents who also enjoyed seeing their work and feeling proud of it. Witnessing the transformations that occur during these creative adventures, when a child makes something that they have come to value, continues to validate my belief in the importance of art and creative thinking at a young age. They are our hope of the future. I also founded and developed an eco-art literacy program at Camp Onita in Upper State New York, a self-esteem camp for inner-city girls ages 10 to 14. The director at the time was a remarkable woman, Eva Lewandowski. She also happens to be my daughter-in-law. A member of the camp as a teen herself, she became the director and fundraiser for 22 years at the age of 22. Thanks to her, I was able to work with these wonderful women to develop these programs. Eco-art activities is based on environmental and ecological issues. The students have an advantage of learning about global and local issues while having hands-on related art activities that develop their personal aesthetic and sense of self. The program included readings about Indigenous people, environmental and social justice issues, and nature themes. The projects combined educational experiences, tours at the local woods, depends on our literature readings, their own research, and the practices in the art room, drawings, paintings, and clay and masks. Because it was a literacy program, they also had to do writings about their work. One activity included doing raku firings of their masks and tasks. It was a risky process and dramatic. They felt a sense of accomplishment, even though they did not always like what the smoke and fire did to their work, in which case they could always add paint and additions to change it, reminding them also that there are no correct answers and that their job as an artist is to figure out what they don't like, and they had power to change it. This became a mantra reminding them that they needed to dialogue with themselves, listen to and give voice to their own valuable feelings. They have the power to change what they don't like. If they could do that in their artwork, maybe they could do that in their lives. This is a video that my son took while we were at camp. Much of the experience at this camp is about building self-esteem. It's about taking risks. It's about challenging yourself and trying new things. And it's about developing a sense of yourself in the midst of all this new activity.
What's your favorite thing at camp?
Play. Nothing is more directly connected to these goals than creative adventures.
I never saw somebody with blonde hair and a blue chin. So did what came to mind.
In the art world, there aren't any mistakes. In other areas of learning, the children have to be afraid of making mistakes or having the right answer. In the art world, there isn't any right answer. There are only individual creative answers. I encourage them to use their imaginations and with the masks to invent creatures that are going to be important to them.
It's major huge. That is awesome. It's like a funny side of me.
So if it's going to be somebody, it's going to be a friend and help them, then and they're going to be a loving creature. Maybe they need big lips to be a kissing creature. Or if it's going to protect them, they need a horn or they need an extra eye. But it doesn't have to be normal. That's the whole point, is that they can stretch their imaginations to do anything they want to. Most of them are inner city girls, and they have an opportunity at this camp to do things that they would never do.
This is my mask. I've never used any of this stuff. I have to think of a scary name because it has a scary face.
It's instant magic, because as soon as they cool just a little under the smoking bucket, then we pick them up and put them directly into water, so the children can handle them and see them instantly, and it's very exciting.
High five, all around. Where are they?
I encourage them to watch what's happening, to dialogue with themselves, and to become conscious of what feeling is coming out, and find a way to pull it out and exaggerate it.
I think it would have looked better with the eyeball. Another eyeball. I like it though. I did it. They made it, and I decorated it, everything.
So it's a little like theater. You want to make the feeling really clear. And the whole time I'm doing that, I'm reminding them that they are absolutely unique individuals, and that of all the children that have ever lived and ever will live in the world, there never has been, and there never will be anybody exactly like you. That's why this artwork is so important to children. If you listen to your very own feelings about this mask, it won't ever come out looking like anybody else's, because it's yours. Okay. So these are some of the things that came out of the Raku firing. And these were decorated with symbols, Indian symbols that they invented themselves. Environmental issues were a continual theme, and we reviewed rain cycles and read articles about frogs in the rainforest, about Jane Goodall, and eco-artists like Betsy Damon's Keepers of the Waters, Betsy. But mostly we talked about what we as individuals could do to help. And one of the things they did was to take their planters and take their Raku planters, and then we would plant them. I taught them about compost, and we planted things. And when we got the compost from the dining hall remains, which we shared with a local bear, I gave them this dark dirt and had them hold it in their hands because it was so beautiful, and I had them smell it. And then I said, oh, and this is very nutritious worm poop. So of course they all went, ooh. These are more planters. These are some of the girls proud of the works that they have done. Aren't they beautiful? Okay. We continued to work with figures, and sometimes we didn't glaze them, we just painted them. And they always had to write something about them because that was the part of their literacy. And one of the literacy programs was to write about where they came from. because they were all almost all from very bad neighborhoods. And so they talked about what it was like to live there, and that always gave them a chance to share with each other and have good discussions. Part of the program was researching an endangered species and honoring it by making a tile drawing that was put up on the wall, and it's still there in the dining hall as we speak. So I will end my work now with an essay written by this beautiful young woman named Wanda Stewart. She was in my class when she was 14, and after reading the Freedom Quilt about slaves, we had an extensive discussion, and I asked them to write a response to the question, why is it important to vote? This is what she wrote. Voting is important to me for 3 reasons. One reason is that for me as an African American, I have the right to vote. The second is because I am a woman. African American females are at the bottom of the list. First, there are white males, then white females, then black males, and finally black females. Having a voice at all speaks of something that is called respect. The third reason is because I have been inspired by my great-great-grandmother. She had been a slave. She had also wanted to learn to read. She got her thumbs cut off so that she wouldn't be able to pick up a book. Because of her, I take education and voting very seriously. And for her to have known the penalty of death, she still insisted on reading. She had to be very powerful. So those are my 3 reasons for wanting to vote, why it is important to me. Wanda Stewart grew up to be a lawyer and became the camp director last year when Camp Onita opened. And that brings us now to Eco Art Matters, which is starting next week, everybody, so you can still sign up. It's Art 141, Laney College. The camp program was the basis for my Eco Art course. This is the course I founded in 2000. A course that I founded in 2005 and taught for 16 years at Laney College, bringing together all my beliefs and ideas for a sustainable, resilient future. Inspired by Václav Havel's use of artists at the political table, I founded Eco Art as a course to combine art and science, where community college students create art, writings, music, and performance based on their extensive research that then brings attention and sometimes reclamation to urgent issues resulting from climate change. Such a course did not exist in the Bay Area at the time. At that time, this image was printed in a public magazine that shocked me, so I copied it and always had it on display in the classroom. Since then, an artist named Chris Jordan went on, and he actually lived on Midway Island with and befriending and then photographing these dying albatross, culminating in a dramatic film called Albatross, worth seeing. After teaching the class for 5 years, I realized I could not teach about the environment without teaching about social justice. So I invited my fellow WEAD board member and noted community artivist Sharon Siskin to team teach with me. Since I have just retired, Sharon will continue teaching it with a fantastic replacement, Minouche Zomorodinia, a well-known Iranian environmental artist. Such lucky students to have these 2 talented, passionate, committed activists as their mentors. So now is a good time to join. Classes usually meet all day with noted guest lecturers in the mornings and art activities in the afternoon, or visits to the Artists in Residence program at Ecologies, or working for Save the Bay, or working with artists at Creative Growth, or going to Vicky Jo Soul's big community garden, Big Daddy's community garden, where we actually worked with the class for 3 semesters. Just a few of the many artists and scientists and writers and politicians and community activists We've had Gray Colifson, who starts the semester with the history of Oakland food, Carol Newberg, who runs the San Quentin Arts program, and often with an ex-prisoner artist, Deborah Monk from Ecology Artists in Residence program that was founded by our own founder, Joe Hansen, Plastic Pollution Coalition, Live Bats Matter from Sulphur Creeks, Christina Bertea, plumber, eco-artist, and artist extraordinaire on water issues, Planting Justice with Bronte Velez, Social Justice Portraits and Art of Michael Bazant, and so many more, too many. But one remarkable speaker I want to mention was Wanda Stewart, who is from the Black Women Farmers. And she now hosts a number of healing garden programs called Mama Wanda's Garden School. She uses puppets and she is worth hearing. She also brought us Cameron Redford, who brought us Black Hives Matter. One of the greatest benefits of the fall session was taking the students to the International Bioneers Conference for 3 days in October. One of the original founders of WEAD was Joe Hansen, who arranged with the Bioneers founder Nina Simons for WEAD to have a booth in exchange for WEAD installing an eco art exhibition. And since students often helped, they were given a greatly reduced admission and sometimes even gratis to attend. It was always a highlight and a very inspirational educational experience, giving us hope for the future. During the semester, these were some of the shows that we did at Bioneers. During the semester, students do some eco art projects and then eventually choose an issue that resonates with them. They have to do an extensive research paper and create a final work in their media or a performance that brings attention to it, reflecting their personal aesthetic and ideas. And the work is accompanied by a fact-based informative artist statements. All of the works culminated in a public exhibition. The students are responsible for creating the media posters and for installing and deinstalling the gallery show. They had to learn something a little bit about becoming a professional artist that could help them apply for shows and grants. Once the show was installed, we invited a guest curator artist to critique the work and the exhibit. So this was the very first show that I had in 2005 at the Oakland Museum. These are some of the students' work over the years. This is obviously about mother's milk and poisons. This is about disappeared children in Guatemala. This is Mary White and James Klein making power bites. This is Krishna Kali Chaduri making the figure of Durga fighting against the latest demon plastic, which she took back to. Okay. Trash babies, Christina with her kakadudu bag. She was in several classes. Lisa Zebrick has hand cut these things with her own scissors. Fresh Digs, Alita Line always made things out of plastic, and she collaborated on this particular piece with Minouche from the Iranian Artists Collective. Okay, this is a more recent student, Leander McNeely. He's been in the class several times, and in both cases, he was working with plastic and their effects on water and cleaning up the water. Okay, this is Nzinga Pace, who is a remarkable person. She was in the class several times, and she lived in and worked in with children in the worst neighborhoods of Oakland. And on the left piece, she made this very large mural about the trucks, the diesel trucks that went through her community and affected children's health. And after school, she ran a program for latchkey kids. And she taught them how to make their own clothes and how they make their own shoes and how to cook, and taught them how to live in the world. Nancy Lemoyne made these wonderful portraits of homeless women. Wonderful student was Michelle Rousey for years, made work with plastic. And in a more recent show, Sewing Fire by Koji Sugiyaka, such a beautiful drawing. In one of the first shows, Phoebe Ackley, this is in fact in the very first show we had, made these pieces about icebergs. And of course, Carl Lasagna made his poster at the time. Karen Malisi was in our class for several semesters making drawings and poems about for her book, Trees. And she was a great animal activist. So we're always things about animals. This is an artwork in 220 recently, honoring the speaker, Courtney Madison. Shelley would draw and paint and sketch the artists that we would have that would come. And Courtney Madison told us about endangered coral reefs. And more recently, from our last class, Pamela Jordan did a piece about wrongful convictions. And Sabrina, and you see here a sample of the statement that the students had to make with their statistics about where they got their work and what it was about. And finally, this was our last show. And the piece on the right was made by Kirsten Furman and her husband, Steve Love. And they made these planters, which everyone participated in. And then they put them on a wheeling cart and took them out into the community. So before I leave, I'm going to show you a video, but I have a few things I want to say. Things that you have probably heard if you know me. As my friends and students know already, one of the guiding Hillel quotes in my life has been, "If I am not for myself, who will be? But then, if I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" Which means first, we have to identify, confront, do battle with, and make peace with our own demons of shame, anger, fear, and grief, until we come to love ourselves as our own best beloved child. If you know me, you've heard me say that before. But then, if I'm only for myself, it means when we truly are able to love ourselves as our own best beloved child, then we have the knowledge and responsibility to teach that to others. Finally, as we over 80 will know, if not now, when? Life is not next year, not next week, or yesterday. It is now, every living, loving moment. So I leave you with love because this has been quite a journey. And I thank you all. If time, I invite your comments. So please do enjoy this final video. Sure. Yeah.
What do you got there?
My painting on Grandma's car. This is my one from this year, and then there's also this one I made last year. Anyone can paint on. All these animals on this car are species. So we paint them on here, show them to people, and to show them what great animals we have to save, and people can see them and try to save them, and see what beautiful animals and cool animals that we can save. And many people comment on this car and they look at it a lot. So whoever passes by it basically pretty much talks to her and comments on it.
What made you pick that one?
You see it here, it's part of our Nevada experience, and it's dangerous. Why? You are so strong.
There you go.
A lady followed us down the road and just to comment on this car. There's no mistaking this car, that's for sure.
Okay. Okay, that's it.
Let's give Andrée a round of virtual applause.
Virtual.
Waving.
I'm sorry for all the ditches. Yay!
Yay.
Hey.
So amazing. to see all of you.
Amazing.
So Andrée, if not now, when we're going to have question, we want to thank you profoundly for an amazing talk. And we are going to close off this recording and start another recording for the questions and answers. So we'd like all of you to put your questions in the chat. And then Sharon and all the co-hosts will kind of look out for who's got a question, and we'll do questions and answers for a half an hour. I just want to remind everybody that we have an exhibition at the Gallery Route 1, which is starting on September 18th through October 24th. So look for the information on the website.